And what we're facing right now is a great deal of uncertainty in the last 4 years out of Washington. And this began with the bailouts, and it continues today. It begins with regulation. Just in the last year, this administration has put forward 4,225 new regulations. The Federal Register that deals with all these regulatory issues and gives the details of it is 81,000 pages long for this past year. We have 224 regulations that will have an economic consequence of $100 million or more. This is just in the last year. So the regulations that we're seeing actually cost money. They actually have an economic impact, and many have a very serious economic impact. When you talk about $100 million or more in our U.S. economy, that is significant. So this approach with more regulation isn't making matters worse and is not making the job situation any better. In addition to that, you have the President's health care legislation that the average small business owner, even the large business owner, can't determine the cost basis of employing a new person. That has a restrictive effect on the economy. Additionally, we have a real challenge to actually get capital, whether it's a small business who wants to expand or keep going concern, or somebody with a small business idea. The Dodd-Frank Act that was passed just over a year and a half ago is very significant, very significant. And many things in the legislation are positive, opening up the markets to more clarity and certainty will be helpful over the long term. But we know that large portions of this actually make credit more costly and less available in a time where we need cheaper credit and greater availability. So the Dodd-Frank Act and large portions of it actually have a very restrictive effect on small and community banks, even regional banks. And this was in reaction to the overreach of the Wall Street banks, the biggest of big banks, not the community banks. Unfortunately, it was a one-size-fits-all approach, and that has harmed small community banks and limited their ability to lend. It's also added to uncertainty in their ability to lend. And obviously, not all of them are in equal shape, as we've seen with recent headlines. So that is of a great concern. And finally, what we are watching now in Washington is this debate that we've seen over the last 6 months, really over the last year, about the federal budget. Severely out of balance, red ink for as far as the eye can see. Now, I can make a partisan statement and lay the blame at this president, but that's not actually in keeping with what we know. The last president was not a responsible spender. The last president overspent, but this president simply spent more, and the budget is completely out of balance. We also are spending a greater portion of our economy coming out of the federal government. Our historical baseline is about 20% of our economy is federal spending. Right now it's 24%. That's historically, it's the highest percentage of our GDP coming out of federal spending, or indebtedness, or overspending. Well, that's a dangerous position we're in. Since World War II, we haven't seen this amount of federal spending as a percentage of our economy. That's dangerous. And at a time where nothing changed with the tax code, but the tax code is producing about 14% of our economy in federal revenues. So why is that? Well, it's out of an inefficient tax code, yes, but it's because people aren't working. And if people aren't working, they're consuming government resources. That's a part of the budget problem we're facing. But you're also not able to pay in. If you're consuming government resources, you're not paying in. And so we have a real challenge here to balance our budget. There's been a lot of debates about what the super committee should do, whether they should go big or simply try to pare down government spending and get some consensus there. I for one, believe that in a time like this of economic uncertainty and people struggling, that we shouldn't raise taxes. Now, I don't think that should be a very dramatic idea. This president extended the 01 and 03 tax cuts for another 2 years because of that. And so what we need now is certainty in the tax code and simplification in the tax code. So we would have a more efficient tax code. I think that would help us. That would help the economic situation. So that's a lot of the discussion about the problems and challenges we're facing. The solution that we have to come up with, and the solution we should focus on, is a matter of us being more competitive internationally. That means making sure that our educational system is the best in the world, that we have education and training programs that provide a real advantage to our young people and to those that are out of work. We can do that in a number of ways, but we need to focus on this, not simply about just trying to grow the economy, but making sure that we're able to compete against India, against China, against these growing economies around the world that we have to compete for. And that means making sure that the tax code is right and competitive, that our regulatory regime and lawsuits are appropriate for a growing economy, that we have an educational system that simply isn't about churning people out, but about giving them skills and the advantages that we should be able to provide them so they can keep a job. The biggest discrepancy in this economy right now is not about wages. It's actually about skills. And when we talk about the inequality of wages, it's really about an inequality of skills. And it's hard. Beyond that, well, once we give folks better skills, they have a better opportunity to make their way in society. That's borne out by our statistics. We see our headline unemployment rate is right around 10%. If you look at those with less than a high school degree, it's over 16%. For those with a college degree or greater, it's less than 6%. So 16 or 6. It's the difference between riding the economy and the waves of the economy or actually making your own way. And when you have skills, you can do that. So those are part of the solutions. And I think we can actually work through this. I really do. But that's what's on my mind today, and I want to tell you, I respect Asheville, and I respect Buncombe County. It is the economic heart of Western North Carolina. I also know that in some of my visits here, I know that it's also got a unique cultural identity. In fact, I got to see Sister Bad Habit riding down the street the last time I was here. So it's obviously unique. And I mentioned before that to someone when I was talking earlier that I've now quadrupled the number of vegetarian restaurants in my district. That's okay. I went and tried Laughing Seed, and I was reassured because it tasted so good I decided it couldn't really be healthy for me. I'm Southern, what can I say? But that's what's on my mind, and I just want to thank you for the opportunity to speak to you and would love to have your questions or comments.